we were saying, we were discussing to sitting and standing, and now the next paragraph or subsection is about blessing the children. There's only two points here. Actually, there's more. Prior to the Kiddush, it is necessary in some... Okay, so this is for first Shlema, for Shifra Simcha Bat Yeta, and all Cholim Klal Yisrael. Speedy refresh Shlema for all.
Amen.
Prior to Kiddush, it is customary in some communities for parents to bless their children. The custom is to use the wording of the Birkat Kohanim, which is found in Bamidbar, but one may add any personal words of blessing as one wishes. It is the practice to place both hands on the child's head during the blessing. There is a view, however, that only one hand should be used in order to differentiate from the blessing of the Kohanim. Okay, so yeah, because when an animal is going to be sacrificed in the temple, they put two hands on it. They designated it, so it's like they're designating the kid for blessing. It's quite weird that they use the same method.
How funny, it's called smicha.
Smicha, exactly. Smicha. That is smicha, yeah. Gavin, you must give us a virtual hand, please, and say Yivarechecha and all that. In Israel, they do it every day. Shachrit, every Shachrit they do Birkat Kohanim. Not only on the Chagim like in South Africa.
Yes, very much. Yes.
But they do it. You in Israel, Gavin, and you went to Shachrit. You do it every day of the week. Birkat Kohanim. Shachrit, doing the repetition.
Let's get started. We've got a very we're behind, by the way. We're actually half a daf behind, so I'm going to vickle through this and make sure that we can get it done as soon as possible. All right, so let me just tell you where we ended. I'm just going to give you a quick summary, okay? So basically, if the value of the ox that damaged, meaning the attacking ox appreciated after it damaged, the damager pays the damaged party according to its value at the time of the damage. So that's to the advantage of the damager, because it's no longer looked at the time of trial. It's looked at whatever the damaging animal was worth when it attacked. So that's to the aid, as Gavin quite rightly said, of the damager. Also, if the value of the ox that damaged depreciated, he pays only according to the value at the time of standing before the court for judgment. Again, that's to the benefit of the damager, which is understandable because according to Rabbi Akiva, at the time of the accident, they divided the ox anyway for selling. So why should the damager be liable when in fact maybe the damaged party failed to look after the ox or worked it to death in the interim, etc., etc. So that's a fair system. So the Gemara examines the latter part of the brisa. The master said in the brisa, if the value of the ox is damaged, appreciated.
What time? I've got upstairs.
Just hang on, Danny.
I'm in a meeting, Danny.
What time I've got?
Danny, I'm not okay.
No problem.
Sorry, guys.
No problem. All right. So what we're saying, the master said in the brisa, if the value of the ox that damaged appreciated after damaged, the damager pays according to the value at the time of the damage. Whose opinion is this? It's the opinion of Rav Yishmael. So that's interesting to note because intuitively it doesn't seem like it, because on superficial value, we learned that Rav Yishmael works at it at the time of standing of the court, but here it says when it's appreciated, it's done at the time of damage, which isn't intuitively Rav Yishmael on a superficial level. But what we're learning about Rav Yishmael is he actually is very complex in that he takes into account time of goring, but the actual trial is when the amounts are dictated about what the damager owes. So it's more deep than that. And basically what he's saying is that the damaged party is only considered the damager's creditor and merely has a claim against him for money. That's why I can do it at the time of the goring, even though the money is only handed over at the time of the trial. So that's important to bear in mind. Okay? But you consider the latter part of the brisa, which states the value of the ox that damaged depreciated. He pays only according to the value at the time of standing before the court for judgment. This concurs with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now that intuitively seems opposite to Rabbi Akiva, because what did Rabbi Akiva says? At the time of the goring, that's where the transfer takes place. And here it's saying, hang on, the depreciated animal is working at the time of the trial. Do you understand what I'm saying, Gavin? On first review, it seems a little bit counterintuitive. Then you have to read further and say, no, it makes sense, because if he has to adhere to the opinion of Rav Yishmael, that it has to be that the Beis Din sells the ox and divides it. In other words, the term is they sell the ox and divide, meaning the Beis Din, according to Rav Yishmael, they sell the ox and divide is an arrangement between the damaged and the damaged party. Okay? So if Rabbi Akiva adheres to Rav Yishmael saying, okay, fine, do it at the court, at the hearing of the court officially that the Beis Din sell it, they actually became partners the minute the accident happened. That's technically when they became partners. And that's why it's the damaged party's fault, because if it was only done at time of trial, the damaged party should have taken the ox at that point. He wasn't allowed to sell it, but wait till the trial. But if it deteriorated in his care, why should the damager have to pay? That's how you can intuitively understand Rabbi Akiva, even though it seems counterintuitive on first review. Fine. So, are we saying that the first opinion of appreciation is Rav Yishmael and the latter opinion of depreciation is Rabbi Akiva? And the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. The entire Bryce is actually in accord with Rabbi Akiva. What are we dealing with here? In the ruling which states that if the ox that damaged appreciated, he pays only according to the previous value. We are dealing with a case where the damager fattened the ox and thus increased its value. Since the appreciation in value came in time, the damaged party is not entitled to benefit from the appreciation. So all we're saying is, guys, is that why is the appreciation worked at the time of the accident, at the goring, is because if there's a 6 months gap between the goring and the trial, and I've been feeding my animal and it's a calf, and it just so happened to have killed your animal right in the heart. It was a puny animal, but in 6 months it's really grown, then I shouldn't be penalized because I spent money getting that animal appreciated. So why is you as the damaged party are now entitled to get more because I'm paying from the body of the ox? Does that make sense? It's actually very straightforward. So it's not the damaged party's benefit. The damager paid for the ox to get fattened. Okay? So there is a difference of opinion. So Rashi says that whether or not it seems from Tosfot's answer that Rashi implies maybe the opposite, but it's not clear. So Tosfot basically states that this applies only if the expenditure was equal to the appreciation. If the appreciation was greater than the expenditure, the damaged party, is part owner of the ox, according to Rabbi Akiva at the time of the goring, is entitled to benefit from the excess appreciation. So what we are saying is clearly, sorry, the cat's always here for the shear. I think this might be a gilgul of some secular Jew. That has to do tickle.
No, James.
I don't know.
No, James, is this revenge from all the comments you make about my cat's bugging me? Your cat comes and gets revenge.
The difference is mine doesn't go past a certain point because you kinder to animals than I. It will land up through the window. Hi, Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Danny. What, Danny?
So Damon, yeah, the surname of the person must have been Cat. So
yeah, so I don't know what you did to deserve coming to my show, what tickle this is for, but I appreciate you coming anyway. So listen, so what we're saying is here, according to Tosfot, it's very straightforward. If the level of appreciation was exactly according to the expenditure, meaning that I spend 100 zuz worth of food and my ox appreciated by 100 zuz, it could mean that then I, as the damager, paid for that appreciation, so you're not entitled to it as a damaged party. Or it might work on a sliding scale. It might mean for every 100 zuz worth of food, my animal will appreciate 400 zuz, but you're not entitled to it because that's the normal appreciation for food growth ratio of a calf that age. All we are saying there is that Tosfot feels that if the appreciation is greater than the expenditure, the damaged party, according to Rabbi Akiva, since his partner with the damaging party is entitled to benefit. However, I would like to find out from Tosfot, not now, in 120, I'm not in any rush, if it works on a scale where you pay for any appreciation, meaning you spent 100 zuz on food and the ox now appreciated to 400 zuz. Do you pay where the damage and the damage each benefits from the 150 zuz appreciation? Or is it a sliding scale of ratio to growth benefit? Meaning, if you spend 100 zuz on food, the animal is going to grow as a calf within that timeline to 400 zuz, but only if it grows to 800 zuz do they get the excess. Do you understand my question to Tosfot, guys? In terms of appreciation value. Fine. So now the next step of it that I'm going to ask you is as follows. Is if you're dealing with a case, for example, where he fattened the ox, in other words, the damager fattened the ox, you need to consider the first section of the brisa. And that's which states, if the value of the injured ox appreciated and stood at 400 zuz, the damager pays the damaged party half damage according to the assessment of the loss at the time of the damage. So what we are saying here is we're contrasting 2 points of the brisa. The value, the first part of the brisa, is dealing with an injured ox. And remember we said that that ox at the time of the goring was worth 200 zuz. It then appreciated to 400 zuz. But why does the damager have to pay? Because it should have appreciated to 800 zuz, if not for the injury. So just because the ox appreciated, the damager can't turn around and say, well, your ox has gotten bigger, why should I pay? Because it's failed to appreciate fully is the reason why the damager has to pay. If, for example, the ox went from 200 to 800 zuz and made a full bodily recovery, there's no reason why the damager would have to pay if there's a full recovery at the time of trial. All clear, guys? So what it's saying is, well, we talked about the damager whose ox appreciated, you do it at the time of the goring. What about when we go back to the first brisa, which talks about the damaged party whose ox went from 200 to 400 zuz, and then instead of 800 zuz, what's the case? Why would you have to mention that? Because it says, if we're dealing with a case where the damager fattened the ox in the second part of the brisa, consider the first section of the brisa, which states, if the value of the injured ox appreciated and stood at 400 zuz, the damager pays the damaged party half damage according to the assessment of the loss at the time of damage, which means he did 50 zuz worth of damage. It's a tam ox, he only owes 25 zuz. Now, if the brisa is dealing with the case where the owner fattened the ox, is it necessary to state that the damager pays the loss according to the time of the damage? Meaning, it's a kind of superfluous statement. Surely, it's obvious that. Do you see what I'm saying, Gavin and Kevin? Is like, why mention it? Obviously, if I was saying to you that my ox, I've been feeding it as the damaged party now, as the damager, you're not entitled to the benefit, so why state the obvious? Okay. Now, if we look in this part, right, so basically, if the injured party can't get benefit if the damager fattened the ox, the damager can't get benefit if the injured party fattened his ox. In other words, he can't be free from liability because the initial loss was recouped, since it was only recouped through the damaged party's expense. That's what Rashi says. So whether it's the damager or the damaged party, either party can't benefit from such an arrangement. Do you see what I'm saying, guys? It works fairly both ways. Art, you can unmute, but...
Okay, yeah, so I understand that. So basically, one can't benefit from the other. Well, both of them can't benefit from whether if they get fatter, and they also don't lose if they other way around as well, if it gets worse.
Correct. So it's fair system both ways. Either party fattens the ox, the other one can't benefit. That's number one. And number two, the damager can't get out of liability because it was only, according to Rashi, through the damaged party feeding his ox that the ox improved. And it didn't improve fully. It was still injured. Okay. So That's fairly clear. Let me just see if I've left out anything. Right. So, okay. So it's going to go through. What are we learning here? Isn't it obvious? The Gemara is saying that if the damager is off the hook from the paying for the excess of the animal increasing, surely the damaged party. And they say yes. So the Gemara is saying, why state the obvious? So the Gemara answers, Rav Papa said, the ruling of the first section of the Brisa applies both to a case where the owner fattened the ox and a case where it appreciated automatically through a price increase. And it was necessary for the Brisa to inform us that in the case where it appreciated automatically, the damager pays according to the loss at the time of damage. So what it's saying here, guys, is it's not as obvious as you think. It's not talking about a case where the owner fed it, because then, I mean, it's clear. What we are saying here is that even it's true in both cases where the ox appreciated because it was fed, and also because the damaged party's appreciation of that value of ox increased, meaning maybe the oxen of that breed increased in the marketplace. So it says that the damager can never free himself of liability by claiming that the loss was recouped, since the effects of the damage are still felt in the poor appreciation. So in other words, even if that ox, now the breed of ox increased, the owners of the damaged ox still felt a loss. Why? Because if it was not for the goring, he could have benefited even more for the price increase of appreciation. So there's no ways that the damager could get out of it. So the novelty of the ruling applies where an ox appreciated automatically, not just through the feeding. Okay, so the Brisa, Rashi said the Brisa needed to teach us this in this case, right? So now the ruling is if the ox had damage appreciated, the owner pays according to its previous value. So this is the ox that attacked. And that holds true only if it appreciated through the owner's expense. So therefore, we're seeing there's a slight difference. When an ox is damaged, the owner of the ox that did the attacking cannot benefit unless the ox makes a full recovery in terms of what it should have done for the ox at that particular growth point. In other words, from a calf from 3 months to 9 months, if the court took 6 months, in that particular case, any appreciation, whether it was for food that the owner fed it, all through a price increase, the damager never gets the benefit. He always has to pay unless the ox is fully recovered. But the damaged party, it's different. The damaged party cannot get any sort of improvement if the owner of the damaging ox fed it. It's only if it increased through an appreciation value that the damaged party can also earn some of the profit. Why is that, guys? Why do you think?
They share it. They share the animal.
Exactly.
Repeat the question, please, Damon. Sorry.
Okay, so Gavin answered it. According to Rabbi Akiva, they're partners in the ox. And since this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, if the attacking animal, which is now used in lieu of half payment to the damaged party, increases in value, it appreciates, the damaged party can only benefit if it's a price increase within the market, but not if that expense came through the damager feeding it. So it's like two business partners, and one paid for advertising out of his own pocket because there was a deadline. The other partner has to when they earn the full profit of that, has to pay back half the proceeds of that as advertising paid by the one particular partner. Does that make sense? Because they're partners. Any question, Gavin? I see you asking a question. I can see you.
Not me.
Do you have a question? With pleasure.
No, where am I asking?
No, I thought you wanted to. I didn't want to interrupt.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm fine.
So let me just read the last part then. The Gemara cites the second ruling Okay, so the ruling of the latter section applies only to a case where the owner fattened the ox. So exactly as Gavin said, is that if the owner expended the money as partners, the owner is not entitled to give the damaged party benefit. But if as partners together the value of the ox increased more than the owner fed it, the difference is split between the two in profit. So the Gemara analyzes the second part of the brisa. If the condition of the injured ox deteriorated after the time of damage, the damager pays according to the assessment of the loss at the time of standing before the court of judgment. So what we are saying here, Gavin, is if the injured ox deteriorates worse from the goring to the time of trial, then in that particular case, we look at it at the time of judgment because the injured ox is entitled to that other benefit. Why? Why, guys? Because its condition deteriorated in a period of time. Meaning, the injured ox, you can't work at it at the time of damage if there's a difference in time between the damage and the actual trial. Why? If one person hits another person, right, and that injury didn't look that bad, but after 6 months, the person couldn't add 2 and 2, they clearly have neurological damage. So that has to be taken into account in terms of expenditure. It's the same thing with the ox if it continues to deteriorate. The only thing the Gemara is saying here is that we have to discern why it's deteriorating, because if you will say that it deteriorated due to work, because now that according to Rabbi Akiva, the damaged party gets the ox, the damager can say to the damaged party, you made it deteriorate and I must pay, meaning you worked the animal to death and now I must pay for the deterioration. So Rav Ashi said no. The Bryce is dealing with a case where the ox deteriorated due to the initial blow, and the damager is liable for the further deterioration because the damaged party can say to him, your ox's horn is buried in my ox. What does that mean in simple English? All it means is the reason that my animal continues to deteriorate is because of the initial injury that you caused at the time of the goring. And therefore, you have to pay for that further deterioration at the time of trial. Very straightforward. We've ended that. I'm going to share my screen because I want to share the Mishnah, guys. Just give me 1 second. 1 sec. Okay, give me a second. Now, I want King Arthur to read this.
The Mishnah discusses the scriptural passage concerning a tam that gores. If an ox that is worth 200 zuz gored another ox that is worth 200 zuz, and the carcass of the gored ox is worthless, Rav Meir said, concerning this case, it is stated, they shall sell the live ox and divide its money. Rav Yehuda said to him, the halacha is indeed so. However, by interpreting the verse thus, you have fulfilled all and only the directive. They shall sell the live ox and divide its money. But you have not fulfilled the additional directive, and the dead one too, that they shall divide. But which is the case that the verse refers to? It is the case of an ox worth 200 zuz that gored another ox worth 200 zuz, and the carcass is worth 50 zuz, in which this one takes half of the live ox and half of the dead one, and this one takes half of the live ox and half of the dead one.
Excellent, excellent reading of the ox. Sorry, guys. I didn't call you an ox, Arthur. I'm the ox. Sorry, man. So that was excellently read.
I'm much bigger than you, Dames. I'm a bigger ox than you. Yeah.
I'm the calf. So basically, you can say to me, guys, what's going on here? It doesn't make sense. So I'm gonna share a screen which is gonna add clarity to what we're doing right now. Okay. So what are we even talking about here? Let me show you. Okie dokie, guys. If you look at Exodus Shmot, chapter 21, verse 35. Kevin, read it.
When a man's ox injures his neighbor's ox and it dies, they shall sell the live ox and divide its price. They shall also divide the dead animal.
Good. So now what's saying is, hang on. There's this argument between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and says, listen, there's certain criteria that have to be fulfilled. You've got to sell the live ox. In other words, whose ox is the live ox? Guys?
The damager.
The damager. Exactly. Kevin, straight on. The damager is the live ox. And the damaged party has to be compensated by either being given money or the live ox. We generally do it on the tum of the live ox because it creates the other leniency apart from half payment, damage also to the body of the attacking animal. And if the attacking animal is puny, tiny, and it aims well, then it's to the benefit of the damager. So we've learned up until now the selling of the live ox. What have we not learned so far? And divide.
Danny, I'm on what's name, please.
They shall also divide the dead animal. So what's the dead animal, guys?
That's the damaged party.
The damaged party's animal.
Correct. So you've got one carcass and you've got one living ox. So what we're saying in this biblical verses, it's very straightforward. We've only discussed how it gets compensated with the live ox, but we don't say what happens if the carcass is worth a certain amount of money. Does that get taken into the equation? Why? In the beginning, we didn't learn that. We only learned that in the case of a pit. What happened in the case of a pit? Guy digs a hole, another Jew's ox falls in, it dies, and the carcass is worth X. So the pit owner only has to pay the balance between the carcass and what that living animal would have been worth. We haven't learned that this well in terms of goring, Keren. We're only learning that now. Okay? There's something I suspected before, and I mentioned it, but I didn't know if I'd be right or wrong. Because I just mentioned that why mention the carcass is worthless if it has no bearing on the issue? I said the very fact that it has a bearing on the issue indicates that if the carcass is worth money, it's offset against the damages owed between the cost of the live animal and what's remaining. Make sense? Good. So now I'm going to share the Mishnah again, and when you read it, it's going to make complete sense. Arthur, read it again.
Okay. The Mishnah discuss the scriptural passage concerning a tum that gores. If an ox that is worth 200 zuz gored another ox that is worth 200 zuz, and the carcass of the gored ox is worthless, Rav Meir said, concerning this case, it is stated, they shall sell the live ox and divide its money. Rav Yehuda said to him, the halacha is indeed so. However, by interpreting the verse thus, you have fulfilled only the directive. They shall sell the live ox and divide its money. But you have not fulfilled the additional directive, and the dead one too they shall divide. But which is the case that the verse refers to? It is the case of the ox with 200 zuz that gored another ox worth 200 zuz, and the carcass is worth 50 zuz, in which this one takes half of the live ox and half of the dead one, and this one takes half of the live ox and half of the dead one.
Great. All right, so guys, let me explain this very quickly and very easily. An ox that's attacking is worth 200 zuz. It kills an ox worth 200 zuz. Now, as a damager, we only pay half of the damage. So if we killed an ox worth 200 zuz, how much do we pay, guys? 100 zuz. Excellent. Fine. And then the fact that the attacking ox is only worth 100 zuz means you don't pay any more or less than that because it works out perfectly. So that's very cool. And it says, and the carcass of the ox that gored is worthless, right? We learned this Mishnah before, but there's a problem. What's the problem? So we understand why you have to sell the live ox, because the owner of the attacking ox needs to get his 100 back, and he has to give 100 back. Very simple. That's very clear. Rav Yehuda said to him that the halacha is indeed so. You have fulfilled only the directive they shall sell the lava and divide its money, but you have not fulfilled the additional directive, and the dead one too they shall divide. So what is he basically saying in a nutshell? He's saying, look, there's a biblical verse, and that biblical verse can't be referring to this particular case. Why can't it be referring to this case, guys? I'll give you a read my screen.
Yeah, and the carcass of the goat ox is worthless.
Yes. So the reality is, Rabbi Yehuda is saying to Rabbi Meir, listen, we can't be talking about this particular Mishnah, because if the carcass is worthless, there's nothing to talk about, because it cannot be offset against losses. We must be talking about another Mishnah. What Mishnah are we talking about? We're talking about the Mishnah that we did last time. In other words, the case of an ox that is worth 200, the attacking ox. Gordon ox that was worth 200 zuz, and the carcass is worth 50 zuz. So if it's a tam ox, which it is, in that particular case, what is the, in which this one takes half the live ox and that one takes half the dead one, and that one takes half the live ox and this one half the dead one. So it's saying it can only occur where you fulfill the biblical directive in full, when the carcass is worth something. Otherwise, it obviously doesn't apply. So we're talking about the Mishnah where the carcass is at least for 50 zuz. That's something to talk about in terms of the perfect case. So does that make sense, guys? So let me show you how the calculation actually works. Okay. Everybody with me so far? It's very straightforward, nothing complicated. So what we're saying is the ox, what's the difference between the live ox and the dead ox? The live ox was worth 200 zuz. Now that it's dead, what is the carcass worth?
50.
50 zuz. So what's left?
150.
150 zuz. Guys, yeah, come on. You need to be a little awake. So what we are saying is that that amount of the carcass is 50 zuz means it's offset. And the damager only has to pay the difference. So what would the damager have to pay? 150 zuz. If it's a tam ox that damage, what would the owner have to pay, guys?
75.
Correct. So the damager pays 75, and who takes a 75 zuz loss? The damage
takes a 75.
No,
the damage part.
Correct,
yeah.
Because the attacker only has to pay half the damage. So he should be owed 150 zuz, but the damager only has to pay 75, and the damage party has to take a 75 zuz knock. Right. So that's the one way of calculating it, that you pay the difference. There's another way to calculate it. This is the discussion.
Yeah, I'll calculate it differently. Can I explain? Because I've got you 75 as well. But now carry on. Worried about time. Carry on.
Just if you don't mind, just because I want to go through it. It's probably the same thing as Gavin's saying. I have a gut feeling. So what you can do is you can take the combined value of the live animal and the carcass. Okay? In other words, what's the live animal worth? It was worth 200 zuz. And then the carcass is worth 50 zuz. So that's 250 zuz, right? Now, if I had a live ox that's worth 200 zuz that attacked yours, okay, I'd have to give you, I would have to give you what? 75 zuz. Does that make sense? In other words, take 200 zuz minus 75. What am I left with? 125 zuz.
125.
Yeah. Arthur, are you with me? Okay. You can unmute yourself, mate. So what I'm saying is as follows. My ox, as the attacking ox, is worth 200 zuz. Fine. I owe you, if you want to take the difference of the damage, 75 zuz, which means I'm left with my live ox value of 125 zuz worth of cash. Fine. What we are saying here is the argument is the same. Because if you take 250 zuz, how's 250? 200 zuz of the live animal and 50 zuz of the carcass, and you split it that the damager gets half the live ox and the damaged gets half the live ox. The damager gets half the carcass and the damaged gets half the carcass. You're earning 100 zuz for the live and 25 zuz for the carcass, which means each party gets 125 zuz. That's exactly the same. Because if I gave you 25 zuz, I would come up with losing 75 zuz and coming back with 125 zuz on the 200 zuz of my carcass worth. It's the same. It's just where it's going to calculate it. There is cases where it's going to make a difference. For example, if the carcass, for example, is worth more than the attacking ox, then you've got a problem because the damager actually makes a profit, which is a big problem, but not in this case. Gavin, what were you going to say?
No, it's fine. Carry on.
I'm listening. Sorry, I'm done.
I just did it differently, slightly different to that as well. So I said it's 100, 200 for the live one. So it's 100 that is liable for, and then the 50 you can get half of that. So the minus the 25 gives you 75. That's how
exactly. It's exactly the same as the second explanation. It's perfect.
And how I did it is I put it all together and I divided it by 2.
Very funny.
So,
yeah.
200 plus 50 divided by 2 is 125.
Exactly. So as the saying goes, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, as that famous expression goes. So Gavin and Arthur did it the same as I'm doing. It's the same. Whether you say you added and then divided or take the life divided by 2, the dead. The only reason I explained it in a convoluted way is I wanted to, anybody that was listening and didn't do Chazorah like you guys, I wanted them to see that they're paying half the live and half the dead ox, and each of them is getting half and half. So whether you pay the difference between the living ox and the dead, and you pay half the difference, or you pay 50% of the live and 50% of the carcass, it's the same. In this case with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. When is it different? Just remember, guys, when your carcass is worth more than the puny attacking animal. So there's a massive appreciation in your animal is dead accuracy of aiming its horn, but an anorexic animal. Cool. Guys, I want to thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you mean in that statement is, let's say I attacked a bull and it was worth like 500 zuz and my bull was worth like 50 zuz.
Yeah.
Okay, my bull of 50 zuz killed it. I'm making money. I should train my bulls.
Yeah. You might be.
It's not a business.
Yeah, because we can't be working out that you would get half the carcass of the ox, because then you start making money on the damage. You train your ox to kill. Exactly. And
you train all your calves to attack big massive 10-year-old oxen.
Exactly. And when my calves are under attack, I take magnesium.
Yeah.